Greetings. My name is Louise Dente, and I welcome you to yet another edition of Cultural Caravan. On this edition is a special as we interview filmmaker, actor, artist, producer, Mr. Juney Smith. Juney Smith has developed several films, one of which we are talking about, we had the privilege of talking about, which is the legend Glynn Turman. Let's welcome Mr. Smith to Cultural Caravan.
Thank you for having me, Louise. It's an honor and a pleasure to be on Cultural Caravan.
Now we'd like to spend a little moment speaking about you, particular, how you got into the business and the work that you're doing.
Well, Louise, I went to Long Island University and I started, studying acting and theater there. And I graduated and I went to a workshop at the New Federal Theater. Every Monday there would be the first 100 people would sign up and you would afford the opportunity to do a monologue or a scene, something of that nature. And it was the explosion in the 70s. This is the mid 70s of the Black theater movement. It was buzzing all through the city. And there were a lot of institutions that was providing work for actors. I went to audition for the Negro Ensemble Company, and they told me that I was selected to take their acting workshop class taught by the great Anderson Johnson. I went to the class, took the course, and after the 8 weeks or so, whatever it was, there was an audition for a play, and I had a T-shirt, Negro Ensemble Company. I just finished the workshop, and I thought that this would be just carte blanche. I can just go on the line, walk into the audition. Because I took the workshop, I would have a shot. And while I was online, I came in on time, but there were a lot of people there before me. I came at a designated time, not knowing that you'd come earlier. And I'm on that line for about 2 hours. And I said, I can't do it this way. I'm going to have to find a place where I could work and develop my skills, opposed to asking someone to do that for me, whether it be a theater company, whatever. I got off the line and sight unseen, based off of everything I learned from studying acting, I started my own theater company, which was the Renaissance Drama Company in Jamaica, Queens. And there is where I duplicated everything I saw from all the other Black theaters. And I got a group of like-minded people, young people who lived in Queens who wanted to act, who were real artists. And I started a theater company. And from that moment on, I developed all the craft at the same time, because I was so green and ignorant that once I assembled everybody, then I realized somebody has to direct this situation. So fresh out of acting school, I become a director, and I directed these actors based off of what I learned being around some other directors in an acting class. And started this theater company, and we were doing revivals of all the great plays. So in that theater company, which ran for 5 years, I was able to develop myself in all of those disciplines. Meantime, as a result of that, I was able to acquire an agent, and I started going on auditions. And I got a couple of what you call under fives on a couple of soap operas. And I was in this play entitled The Old Fay Watcher, and a casting director from MTM, CBS, who was the casting director of the show The White Shadow back in the 80s, and the great Kevin Hooks and the great Thomas Carter, they left after the 3rd season to become directors of the show. That was in their contract. So they were looking for people, other people, not necessarily to replace them, but just a different arc in the story. And the casting director saw me in the play, asked me to come to the Sheraton Hotel on 57th Street and Broadway to meet her executive producer, who is Bruce Patrow, which is Gwyneth Paltrow's father, who created the show, The White Shadow. I read for him. He put me through a audition session, a work session. And the next thing I know, I'm in Hollywood. And I'm in Hollywood, and I was contracted for 6 episodes, wound up doing 2 episodes because the show was canceled. And I stayed there for 15 years, and I did a lot of television, as far as back as MASH and The White Shadow in television. 2 classic movies that is my is a part of my mantra. I played the engineer in Good Morning Vietnam, which is a comedy classic with the great Robin Williams. I was opposite him. I was the engineer in that, myself, Forrest Whitaker. And also, I was a detective co-starring as Tom Weiler in Lethal Weapon 2. So that's the action classic. And then I did a bunch of television, the Hill Street Blues and the MASH and the Growing Pains and the Matlocks and the Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman. I did all that television. Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, I created another theater company entitled the Rainbow Connection Theater. Once again, I'm directing and I'm producing, and I wrote some plays, After all the directing and in the theater, and I'm doing all the acting in front of the camera. And so my instinct, just a part of my assignment, my spiritual assignment as an artist in terms of what I'm supposed to do, I applied to NYU's film school, the intensive filmmaking course, with no film experience at all except for acting. However, I had 100 flyers of plays I directed. And so this was an intensive course, $20,000. If you don't have it, the next person on the list. They chose 12 people. If you don't have it, the next person on the list, after 20,000, he gets in this intensive course. It was Monday to Friday, practical on the weekend, but you got a 16mm camera and you went and you shot. And I presented my 100 flyers and got me an interview. And I was able to have the underwriting. And so I took this course because I wanted to learn the technical part of filmmaking. Now, a director, no matter what medium, directs actors. That's what a director does. A filmmaker is an adjacent, it's a technical thing. It's a mathematical, scientific additive to your directing when you're talking about filmmaking. But the fundamental of filmmaking is directing actors, and that you can't get past. So I had this familiarity, of course, with the actors and away with that. And so I took this class. Now, this is in the 90s. And just a few years before that, this new thing called home video was emerging. A big store called Blockbusters, where people were renting movies, taking them home. And this is an alternative to cable or the movie theater itself. So when I was in film school, I made a conscious effort and decision that I'm going to go into the home entertainment business. I'm not seeking to, at this point, I'm in my 30s, my early 30s, and not going to take a script and bounce around to the studios to ask them to do my stories, because in most cases, they will tell you no, not because anything is not good or bad, but because there's a system, there's an ecosystem, there's a structure that's already established. And what it is that the one-of-a-kind kids coming out of university, whether it be UCLA Film School, USC Film School, and NYU's Film School, or these young kids who are coming out of school, they are the ones who get the nurturing, who get the studio deals, who get the major agencies who package these things. So being Black and being established as an actor, and more importantly, the lessons I learned from Marcus Garvey and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and from Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, and so on and so forth, in terms of doing for us and doing for ourselves. So what I did is that I got 7 investors who are with me today, and we did our first film. I said, we're going to go to the home video business, and that's where our longevity is because there's a market there. There's going to be a future. People are renting movies, and eventually people are going to see it at their homes more than the movie theaters. And this was my vision. So I got together 7 Black people, and we pooled our money and we started a movie company opposed to just doing a movie. We decided that all of these folks that came in, the investors, were all friends of mine who believed in me and my vision, and they were only interested in producing and coming into business with me. So after all the acting and everything, I made my first movie entitled The Nation. But this particular movie and story I wanted to tell because of the dynamic individuals that was involved in Nation Islam, which is my first hero, Muhammad Ali, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Malcolm X, Minister Farrakhan, all of these people who earnestly gave knowledge to Black people for liberation and independence and knowledge and wisdom of self and kind. And I thought it'd be interesting to do this movie from the historical point of view, not knowing what Spike was going to do, the great Spike Lee, and loved him, loved Malcolm X. We had nothing to do with that. But this particular movie, The Nation, was about the history of the Nation Islam.
Looking at your decades of connection to the theater and to the business of movies, which is something that not too many of us understand, you've recently become focused on, or you not recently, but you've actually have a project, the project that you recently have promoted, which is dealing with the documentary focusing on the legend of Glynn Turman. Tell us how you got to that project. What led you to that particular project, and what have you learned since then?
I first saw Glynn Turman once again in the 70s in the high school in a play called What the Wine Cellars Buy by Ron Milner, the great playwright out of Detroit, Michigan. And Glynn Turman, and I'm studying acting at this point, he became instantly my favorite actor, period, to this day. That means nobody else. I don't care who it is. That's my favorite actor, Glynn Turman. And I've always had that for that admiration and respect for Glynn as an artist, his work, and he's just wonderful talent. So let's cut to the filmmaking. So I write this script entitled City Teacher, which is about that starred Ella Joyce and Glynn Turman and Tommy Ford and Frank Vincent and Chuck D. And this movie, and Glynn Turman, and this movie was about a white teacher teaching in New York, illiterate Black kids who, were on the brink of criminality. And however, this white teacher was raised by a Black family, Black parents, because he was the godchild of these Black parents, and his parents had passed away in a car accident. And Glynn Turman and Ella Joyce played the parents who raised this kid and kept his culture, taught him his culture, and of course, not default, just through association, learn Black culture and have Black admiration. And I wanted to highlight how the majority of teachers that's in New York City public schools are white teachers who are in charge of manning the education of these Black children. And if they're not committed as human beings, it could be very detrimental. And I met Glynn. Glynn, his agent just submitted him. And the moment that his picture came across and the agent said he read the script, he's interested, we said, give it to him, my favorite actor. And that's how I met Glynn and had a chance to work with Glynn. And that movie is City Teachers, entitled now A Hard Lesson. It's out everywhere. And so as a result, we became friends. And this was 2006 since. And so Glenn and I decided to partner up because we were talking about unsung heroes or song heroes who were either Black performing artists or about Black institutions. And I've made a number of documentaries with school principals. I did the documentary on Long Island University basketball, LIU Brooklyn basketball, which I went to school on a basketball scholarship, and I went to LIU Brooklyn, and I did the whole history that started in 1930 to 2015. So I've done some documentaries, but now we wanted to focus on a certain genre, which was entertainers and entertaining institutions. And so the first one we did together was King of Stage, which is about the great Woody King Jr., the founder of the New Federal Theater. And we've done 9 of the films since then. And we started this 5 years ago. So we're on our 10th film in editing now in the last 5 years of documentaries. And so Glynn, it took 3 years for me to convince Glynn that we needed to get you because so many people stand on your shoulders. All these movie stars today literally stand on your shoulders because of what he did in that 70s, that Black film era, the excellence and the gravitas that he brought to that era helped springboard us as performers where we are today. So that was, and then I had to convince him. I said, Glenn, the major thing is that forget everybody else that I'm telling you about that you have influenced or homage you. Let's just think about your children, your grandchildren, your immediate family. They would have something to hold on to visually about your life. And that's what convinced him. We had no idea what the reaction was going to be until we had our New York premiere and then we had a Los Angeles premiere 3 weeks later. And both overwhelmingly greeted, accepted, and we're just ecstatic about it. And now, it's going to be released on June 20th, and pre-orders are taking place now for the film.
Now, I think about what you said, and in a moment, we're going to give people an opportunity to see a glimpse of this wonderful movie. Let's look at the legend of Glynn Turman.
I was born in Harlem, New York. My mother's only child. I was an adventurous youngster. Harlem was great as far as I was concerned. I loved it. I do know an event happened, and soon after we moved, playing a great deal of hooky. I'd go to the movies. Every once in a while, you'd see a Sidney Poitier movie. So I found myself in the movies or at the stables at Central Park because I was fascinated with horses. To get a chance to ride a horse. That's what I would do when I should have been at math class. I love shop and my music class. And my woodshop teacher was he that introduced me to performing arts high school. He knew that I had been on Broadway at the age of 12. The only thing that could get me to come to school was if there was a production. Lorraine Hansberry said to my mother at this one particular time, Glynn, I've written a play and there's a part for a little boy in it. Do you think Glynn might be interested in trying out for this part? And she told me, she said, that actor that you like, Sidney Poitier, he's going to be in it. I said, oh yeah? So she said, yeah. I ended up getting the part. I remember Cooley High came out, and then I remember going one day to my aunt's, and there's this commotion, and I go to the door, and the halls are just jammed with people. So that's when I knew something had changed. I'm not in it for the money. I'm paid to wait and I act for free. It's the work that attracts me. I only like, at this point, working with people who are serious about the business and giving it up. I like surrounding myself with those like-minded folks. Other than that, my career has been pretty cool. I'm a winner. I play to win.
Whoa, That was phenomenal. I must say that you really captured the essence. You take us from his childhood in New York and his mother and the influence of him, his first film, which is he's one of the earliest young artists to be on the stage in Raisin in the Sun, to all of the multitude of movies that he did, as well as his reflections on his career. So you really shared a lifetime of Glynn Turman. What did you, in the process of learning more about your friend, what did you learn as a result of doing his story?
I learned about the African connection from Africa to us as artists. As I listened to him, I crafted these, there's a script to these documentaries. We don't just sit down arbitrarily, just ask, tell me about yourself, And similar to a great interviewer like yourself, it has to be structured, so it's a script. It's, 3 acts and it's a story. And the questions, so this is the way, because it's very difficult. See, I do something that's very unusual. This documentary just has Glynn Turman in it alone. There's no one else opining. And that's in all my documentaries. I don't have anybody else opining. And the reason for that is that I got 90 minutes, 95 minutes, the most, not for any technical reasons, but just in terms of audience assumption, what I mean, and audience absorbance. You give them 90 minutes, you give them just enough. They could take a little bit more, but it's not too much. And that kind of strategy, especially with just one person on screen who has to be dynamic enough to hold the audience for that long, which Glenn and everybody that we've done has been able to do. And in the questioning, and then just knowing his history, and I said, this man is majestic. He's majestic in his performances. There's nothing weak or milquetoast or Thomish, no matter what he's playing. That's in his performance. And so as that goes on, I had to ask him at the end, not knowing what he was going to say, about Africa. Because I said, we have to have a through line here that's even above the art. This special artist, why is he so revered? And for so long, even to this day, he's ascending even more. And we talk about the kings and queens of Africa and the royalty. And I honestly believe that that is the essence he comes from. And it was brought in the terms of emerged as this artist, but that integrity and that dignity he brings, but unbeknownst to him, this is just what he's bestowed with. This is what he's imbued with. This is his blessing. This is why he on earth. This is his purpose. And he brings that with him. Now, as you stated, he started at 12 years old in the Raisin in the Sun. Who was in the Raisin in the Sun? The great Claudia McNeil, who was born in 1903. You had the great Ruby Dee. You had the great Lou Gossett Jr. You had all of these people who were older than him, and all the treasures that he garnered by just being around, just through osmosis, he brought to him to the 60s, when he was the first Black family or Black people ever to be on a nighttime soap opera, Peyton Place. Glenn was a young one amongst in that decade and was doing all his quality work. The River Niger, Ceremonies and Dark Old Man, Thomasine and Bushrod, just quality films, Five on the Black Hand Side. It was all these great plays he did. And then the classic Cooley High, which is universally now, Cooley High, of course, is, one of the best films ever made. It's in the National Registry now in films. Just a classic, perfect film that showed a culture that everybody can relate to. And that's what made him a star. Now, the JD Revenge and all of that, he was doing all of that. All those great movies that he was. And so, but the way he carried himself and his performances set it up for this. So that was something that, I was all intrigued to, and I wanted to illuminate that in the documentary to learn about this artist, what he went through, the decision he's made, his process, and the spiritual connection that he has from Africa that went through his whole career to this day. And I don't want to give the film away, but we deal with Africa in the film. And that was the intriguing thing and the thing that I learned about and not just him, but in filmmaking alone, is that, you have what we call these beautiful surprises that come through. And it was a gift. So in the process, learning that. So I can take that with me to find every time I make a movie to get to that most profound through line and make sure that's illuminated above the obvious.
Now, you've shared a lot of the backdrop, the history, and also telling us about the background of Hollywood and how it came developed. Because a lot of people know of these things, they don't understand how it was developed from where it was and where it is, as well as how it impacted on the life of the legend, Glynn Turman. At this point, and as we conclude, I just want you to tell them, what is your email address, how people can find out more about pre-ordering this wonderful work for their archive.
Well, thank you so much for that, Louise. Actually, it's a website, and it's www.JuneySmith, Juney, the month of June with a Y, JuneySmith.com, JuneySmithFilms, I'm sorry, .com. That's JuneySmithFilms.com, JuneySmithFilms.com. All of my movies are up there, with availability information is up there. You can pre-order The Legend of Glynn Turman now. So just log onto that site, and the site will bring you to the stores commercially where they're located.
Well, I just want to take this opportunity to sincerely thank you, Juney Smith, for your contributions to preserving our collective history, because all of this is about telling our story, really making sure that future generations understand how we got to where we are now and where we're going. But we want to thank you again, take this opportunity to thank you for the foresight and, first of all, getting into theater, getting into filmmaking, making sure that there is a reference point to our work, our contributions to this world, this society. And thank you so much for this opportunity.
It's an honor, Louise. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I deeply appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed this broadcast, and we continue to encourage you to tune in, to write, and to tell a friend. But until next time, Louise Dente saying thank you.